Hello and welcome to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Katie Kairos in for Eric Landsgroner. Governor Christie talked about the presidential election at a press conference this week and said, in spite of poll numbers, Donald Trump can turn it around in the upcoming debates. He held an event to mark the signing of a bill to prevent state investment in companies that are anti-Israel. But that wasn't all that he decided to weigh in on.
But despite that, no, not despite that. That's my answer. You don't like it? Too bad.
Taking questions at the State House, Governor Christie took on the topic of Donald Trump. The candidate is now lagging in the polls, but Christie says he's confident the debates will make the race competitive.
It can completely transform a race overnight. So I won't be concerned, if I ever am concerned, about Donald's campaign until after that.
Target practice for the governor in this press conference. The first target, the ACLU. Christie signed into law a bill to keep the state's pension fund from supporting companies that boycott Israel. But the ACLU says it's against freedom of speech.
So what you're saying to me is the ACLU is against this? Yes. Okay. Can you put it back out there? I want to sign it twice. The ACLU in New Jersey. I mean, this is like a useless group in the state.
Next, Atlantic City. The bankrupt city recently received a $74 million loan from the state.
They're broke. They're begging the people of the state of New Jersey to bail them out, and then they want to dictate terms.
And the final target, the state Senate. State road projects have been at a standstill for weeks. Christie says the Senate should have posted his gas tax plan and put workers back on the job.
I feel awful for them that the Senate has decided to put their own internal politics ahead of what's good for the workers of the state, the roads.
Well, Senate President Steve Sweeney responded to the governor's comments regarding TTF. He said he's focusing on getting the votes he needs to override the governor and pass his own Transportation Trust Fund plan. Governor Christie wrapped up that press conference Tuesday, but after that, we saw a New York Times report come out on a deal that the state of New Jersey cut with Donald Trump in 2011. That deal reduced a $30 million casino tax debt to only $5 million. Chris Christie was governor at the time of the settlement, and the timing raises questions about whether Trump got preferential treatment. Bob Jordan covers Governor Christie for the Asbury Park Press. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So how damning do you think this report is for Governor Christie in terms of the connections that the paper was drawing?
Well, there's two components. There's the report, which is damning in itself, the potential favor that Donald Trump might have been afforded, and then maybe a payback later on with their close work together on a Trump campaign. But also, Christie's position is that he was unaware of this back in 2011 when Trump received a $25 million tax reduction. So if he's unaware and he's saying didn't know what was going on, it's just, some of his critics are saying it's not plausible. How can you not know that the state is losing out? He gets weekly briefings, he said, from the Treasury. One of the briefings must have noted, well, we just lost $25 million potentially. So he didn't ask questions. It's just hard. It's hard to believe.
And is there any connection that, I guess, the governor was in the U.S. attorney, maybe while some of this tax dispute with Trump was going on? Does that make it seem less believable that he wouldn't have known about this going on for years?
Well, during that time, not only was he U.S. attorney, but he has said many, many times that he is friends with Trump going back through that time. So I don't know, it might come up at one of their many dinner conversations that Trump had this issue with New Jersey and he's working to fix it.
Do you think it's unusual? I know the Times said that the public records they were using didn't show exactly how this settlement played out. Why do you think that is? What else do you think we would need to see if there was some kind of improper conduct going on?
Well, none of the public records would show anything except for official actions. Christie's name is on like every document, you know, Governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. That doesn't mean there's no proof that he actually signed off. He doesn't have to sign off. The Attorney General's office and Division of Taxation did it. But, you know, it's his administration and the buck stops with him.
Do you think we're going to see more of this case, of this issue raised by the New York Times, or does it stop here? It's just going to be a curious thing.
Well, there was a similar case with ExxonMobil where ExxonMobil got a break from New Jersey on a settlement, and both ExxonMobil and Trump have been contributors to a political group that Christie's been involved with, and in fact was chairman of, the Republican Governors Association. So it looks like there's a history forming here. Christie's not running for governor next year, but it damages him politically.
And so looking at the governor's press conference this week, he did take a bunch of questions on Trump and some of Trump's stances that he's been taking. Do you think he's still stumping for Trump? Are we still seeing a very enthusiastic governor helping Donald Trump lately?
He is. He defended Trump. You were there, and he defended Trump on several different issues. He went to Trump's first national security briefing this week, and he's the chairman of Trump's transition team for a presidential transition if it takes place. So, he's got many heavy bets on Trump, and he's very loyal to Trump, as he's telling us.
One part I found interesting was the voter ID questions, or rather he was talking about Trump's position that the system is rigged for the election, and he was talking about voter ID. Was he agreeing with Trump that it's rigged, or what did you get out of his answer to that? I wasn't sure.
I think 2 weeks ago he kind of like shielded off that question and said, no, I don't think elections are rigged. But as Trump has pushed this point on the campaign stump, Christie kind of walked over that way. There is a bill on his desk about voter registration. Democrats want very much for him to sign it. I doubt he will. It could be a ballot issue in New Jersey next year. And it seemed like his rhetoric moved a little bit toward more of where Trump is, in terms of the elections aren't as pure as everybody seems to believe.
All right, Bob, thank you for breaking it all down for us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Stay with us. There's a lot coming up today. New Jersey's transportation freeze, road projects halted. Greg Lalevee of the International Union of Operating Engineers is here to talk about the crippling impact on his members. And standing by, Jeff Brindle of the Election Law Enforcement Commission says voters are in the dark about how many millions are being spent on the casino ballot question and who is doing the spending. But first, let's take a look at this week's PNP Pop Quiz. Welcome back to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Katie Kairos. The state's campaign finance watchdog is the Election Law Enforcement Commission. It oversees all political contributions at the state and local level, enforcing pay-to-play and disclosure laws in New Jersey. But ELEC doesn't have the teeth to do its job at the moment because 3 out of 4 seats on the board remain vacant. Jeff Brindle, Executive Director of the Election Law Enforcement Commission, also known as ELEC, is my next guest. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you for being here.
So the status right now, I guess you have a lot of work going on, but the board hasn't been able to meet in months because of these vacancies. In whose role do you think that is mostly? Is it more the governor or Democrats? Do you think they both share the blame for the fact that it's not?
Yes, I mean, basically the governor nominates candidates to be on the commission, and the Senate then confirms. So, both have a role in nominating people to our commission.
Is that problematic that the politicians that ELEC is overseeing are in charge of filling those positions?
Not really. I mean, we've been in existence since 1973, and it's really never been a problem. It's really worked very well. And there's never been any interference. We're by statute an independent agency, and there's never been any interference by, either the legislature or the governor, any governor, in terms of our operations. So it's not a problem.
So it's not kind of maybe a form of passive interference, the fact that they're not being filled, though?
Well, I think that, there's been a lot of issues, particularly with the funding the Transportation Trust Fund and the budget process. And I think, it's just a matter of the governor and the legislature getting around to, filling the seats on the commission. And, I know that they're working on it. We have been in contact with the governor's office as well as Senator Sweeney's office in terms of filling the positions.
And so even without the monthly meetings, even without those positions filled, there's a lot of work going on. What's happening behind the scenes right now? We're coming up on the November election. I'm sure it's a big time.
Well, we're still continuing as a staff to function every day on a day-to-day basis, doing the work. Investigations are still going on with regard to any complaints that have come into us or anything that, any of our audits. We're still auditing reports and so forth. We're still doing seminars and training sessions for candidates and lobbyists and business people in terms of the pay-to-play law, PACs and political parties. We're still doing analytical reports, citing the different trends in campaign financing and lobbying. And we're in the process of upgrading our computer system. So there's a lot of activity, at the commission.
You mentioned training. What are you training them for?
Well, we have candidates and treasurers that come into our seminars so that we teach them how to file their reports and to make sure that we get good compliance. Lobbyists, that come in, and we do the same thing with regard to the lobbying law and their responsibilities under it in terms of disclosure. Same thing with the pay-to-play law with business. So. With all of those communities out there that we serve, we provide that kind of compliance information.
I know there's a lot of money flying around right now about the North Jersey Casino Amendment that's going to be going on the ballot in November. What are you seeing with that? Are there concerns about the super PACs?
Well, yeah, this is an issue that I've been talking about for probably 5 years now. That there's a lot of independent spending. Both this year, it's going to be on the ballot question, particularly the casino question. I'm estimating that there'll probably be about $40 million or more that'll be spent pro and con that ballot question. And the issue there really is that there's no disclosure in most instances, from these independent groups. And what we've been doing is, calling for the legislature to reform the law to provide that these groups have to register and that they have to disclose their contributions and their expenditures, just like political parties and just like candidates have to. So that has been a concern of ours, and it's going to be a lot of spending on their part this year.
Do we have some idea of who these groups are that are spending the money, though? The independent groups?
Well, that's one of the problems. I mean,
really
you have fancy names that these groups come up with, and we don't really know who's behind them in many instances. And that certainly is in the public interest for this kind of disclosure, for the public to know, if you're going to have an informed electorate, for them to know who is funding these groups and how much they're spending.
So, but coming up on November, do you think there's going to be time to actually introduce that change to the legislation, or do you think we're kind of going to hit the ballot in November? It's going to be a lot of stuff going on, in ads and all that, and then voters are just going to take a smack
Well,
at it.
right now, both Minority Leader Bramnick and Democratic Assemblyman Singleton have introduced legislation that would require disclosure. We worked very closely with them, with both sides, to get this legislation. Whether or not they're going to be able to, it's been introduced, but whether or not the legislature will pass it by this election day, I doubt it. But certainly I'm cautiously optimistic that something's going to be done for the future.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, it was my pleasure.
Please stay with us. Greg Lalevee of the International Union of Operating Engineers is standing by. There's more to come on New Jersey Power and Politics. Welcome back to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Katie Kairos. We're going on about a month and a half since the Transportation Trust Fund expired and road projects froze across the state. That means a lot of workers have been out of a job. Greg Lalevee of the International Union of Operating Engineers works on behalf of his members facing that issue right now. Greg, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And I guess the latest news on this is that the governor released an executive order this week, and he says that he'll be taking money from the general fund if there's a massive emergency that does need to be fixed on our roads. What's your reaction to that? Does that help our workers at all?
Not really. It doesn't fix the crisis that we're in. We knew the Transportation Trust Fund was due to run out of money sometime around this point in time, and the state will have to respond to emergencies that do come up. There was a bridge that washed out in Bernardsville on July 10th. So things like that were needing urgent repair still need to be addressed. So the governor apparently had to turn to the general fund since the Transportation Trust Fund is empty.
And 5 years ago, when the TTF was last being authorized, I know that was done right before the deadline. Did you have any inkling that this was going to go past the deadline this year and that your workers would be in this situation? What are you hearing from them now? How are they struggling?
Well, they're frustrating. This is the high point of the construction season. To answer your question, no, we never thought it was going to go past June 30th. But every month they're unemployed now is the equivalent of being unemployed for 2 to 3 months, because typically construction shuts down in the winter, and this is when they would be out working on those projects. So the longer they stay closed down and not working extends their unemployment probably till April or May of next year.
How are workers dealing with this right now? They're dipping into unemployment, or what are they doing to stay afloat?
Well, they're going on unemployment. If there's other job opportunities that come along, of course they're taking them, but this is the backbone of the work that they do. So there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of frustration with how and when this is going to be settled and fixed.
There have been several different plans on the table for how to fund the TTF. The 23-cent gas tax increase has been in, I believe, most of those plans. That's something that your union's in favor of, I believe. Is there a particular plan that you're supporting?
Not a particular plan. Obviously, we're happy that the governor, the speaker, and the Senate president have all identified a tax number that they're comfortable with. We also know that they all want to have some kind of tax breaks to go along with it, and that seems to be where the disagreement is. We're not in favor of any specific plan. We're happy to see them do tax cuts just like anybody else would be. We just hope they come together and figure out what that is and what's palatable that the three of them think they can live with.
How are you reaching out to lawmakers now as this drags on?
Well, we're having members interact with them. We're constantly on the phone advocating for what's important to them, which is going back to work, which is what they want to do. So it's a constant interaction. From our office, reaching out and trying to find out where there might be some accord and where we might be able to get ideas put together.
What are you hearing from them? Do they seem like they're understanding what you all are going through?
They seem to understand it, but it's a lot of frustration that they're not in Trenton fixing it right now.
What would you like to say to them if they were watching right now?
To get to Trenton and fix it. We think, again, that all the proposals we've seen have landed on the same tax number, and we agree with tax fairness, and we would hope that they would get together and figure out what's palatable to everybody and get this. This affects the economy of the entire state, not just the operating engineers. So, we see this as a crisis that affects the whole state.
When you're looking at this standoff, it seems like there hasn't been too much traction with getting a compromise. How do you see the role of the governor versus, the Senate president or the state Senate? Is there a particular angle there that is most frustrating to you? Do you think the governor needs to take more of a leadership role?
At this point, there's not really one or the other. They seem to have all, worked together, agreed with some things together, disagreed on other things. It's just going to be constant work to bring this to a conclusion.
All right, well, I'm hoping we see a conclusion soon, start to see some positive signs. Thank you, Greg, for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Please stay with us. There's more to come on New Jersey Power and Politics. Welcome back to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Katie Kairos, in for Eric Landsgroner. Governor Christie was in Somerset County this week to celebrate the completion of a portion of a major flood project. The project broke ground in Bound Brook in 1999, just months after Hurricane Floyd sent residents running. Since then, new flood walls were built throughout the Greenbrook Basin. The project cost a whopping $143 million to complete, money the governor calls well spent. This is just the first completed part of the project. When finished, 65 square miles of low-lying land will be protected from floods. That just about wraps it up. We'd like to hear what you think about anything we discussed in today's show. Visit our New Jersey Power and Politics Facebook page. Go to NJ Power Politics and give us your take on the latest political headlines. That'll do it for this week. I'm Katie Kairos. Thanks for watching New Jersey Power and Politics, and we'll see you next time.